welcome everyone to Beyond the Crucible, the podcast that dares to talk about setback and failure, but not so we can commiserate, but so we can elevate. Hi, I'm Gary Schneeberger, the co-host of the show, and our mission today is to offer you the hope that your crucible experiences, those tragedies and challenges you faced or are facing, don't define you. They refine you. They did not happen to you, they happened for you. And we're particularly driving down in this season of the podcast on a series that we're calling Second Act Significance. We're really drilling down to focus on folks that had a first act in their life that maybe wasn't fulfilling, that maybe wasn't everything they thought it was, that it could be, and then they moved on to a second act, which is, as we call at Crucible Leadership, a life of significance. And no one knows about everything I've just told you any better than the founder of Crucible Leadership, the host of the show, and my friend Warwick Fairfax. Warwick, welcome. I can tell that you're like holding the reins back because you want to go so fast on this one, because our guest today and you have a lot in common.
Absolutely. Very excited. So, yeah.
And our guest today is Yvette Bodden, who is the founder and author behind Awakened Woman, a digital platform designed to inspire and invigorate females. She writes, as people have said, love this phrase, with endless empathy. In just 2 years, Awakened Woman has amassed tens of thousands of followers, thanks to a combined 500 plus articles centered around celebrity profiles, relationship, love, abuse, motherhood, and Latino culture, infused with a signature blend of her pragmatism and compassion. In 2021, Yvette was named one of Bella Boss's We Admire by Bella Magazine. Her debut book, A Journey to Becoming the Best Self, part memoir and part prescriptive fiction, looking forward to hearing more about that, inspired by Yvette's own post-divorce path from devastation to joy, was published in 2019 and received praise from the U.S. Review of Books. As a single mom based in New York City, a metropolis she credits for her open mind, Yvette regularly channels her own growth experiences. She has contributed to outlets like Smart Co-Parent and DivorceHub.com that focus on personal crises. Ultimately, Yvette's writing, which seeks to empower and encourage women searching for personalized definitions of success, is an effort to build strong communities through vulnerable and powerful storytelling. Warwick, there's so many of the words in what I just read there that coincide with what Crucible Leadership and you are about. This is going to be a really interesting conversation.
Absolutely. And Yvette, thank you so much for being here. I mean, it is truly an honor to have you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here. I'm so excited. This is just such a powerful and much needed conversation.
Well, I agree. I mean, as I was reading your website and some of the things you've written, not an eloquent phrase, but I kept going like, wow, amazing. Oh my gosh. You know, it was just like we haven't even spoken yet. I, had goosebumps just reading about kind of your philosophy and who you are. So, I love just the concept of Awakened Woman and your book, A Journey to Becoming the Best Self. I mean, something that everybody can aspire to. So before we get a bit into, obviously you had a sort of a crucible and all, tell us a bit about Yvette Bodden and sort of just family, culture, how you grew up, because I often find the origin story, certainly is in my case, definitely I'm a product of my environment, and we all are to a degree. So just give us a bit of a window of some of the strands that led to who you are now, if you will. Yeah.
Wow, great question. So I was born and raised in New York by Dominican parents, very strict parents. They very much nurtured the arts in our family. So, I've always written. I wrote a song when I was 14 years old. I studied ballet for 6 years. I played the piano, the guitar. So, it was really something, just nurturing our creative side was something that was important. And I think, part of this journey, I sort of, I tapped into that part of my childhood, I think, because I didn't plan on being a writer. I didn't have a master plan to write a book. I absolutely didn't. So I was raised in Manhattan, and, I think I have a sort of a combination, a little bit of grit, but also some compassion. And I do hone into that when I write. Well, that's Yvette.
Wow. So it's interesting because some families are like, no, math or sports or whatever it is. But it's fascinating that your family just had a real love of the arts and encouraged that, because not every family does. But
Well,
yours did.
Well, I don't want to, sort of give you a misconception. My mother did say you have to be a doctor or a lawyer. You can do anything else on the side, but don't. So no, when it came time to go to college, it was, I majored in psychology. So no, she wanted to nurture the creative side, but there's really not a lot of money to be made as writers out there now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of families, when they come to this country, I think maybe irrespective of culture to a degree, it's like, they want their kids to be successful, stable, have a nice home. I mean, it's part of the so-called American dream. I mean, it's probably the dream of pretty much every culture, I guess. And so there's an understandable part of our parents that says, we want you to be happy, but, you've got to be practical. You got to be able to eat, have a job, roof over your head. And, for some of us, it's like, well, of course, but not everybody grows up with, that kind of environment where it's all kind of, I wouldn't say easy, but it's easier maybe. So how did that form who you are? I mean, you loved the arts, but there was this voice in your head from your parents, Yvette, you got to be practical, got to pay the rent. You got to pay the bills. I mean, come on, dreams are fine, but dreaming is for the weekend, during the week, you got to be practical.
I don't know. I think I've gone the opposite way. I've come to a place where I believe dreams are possible. I feel that if you work hard and, you just put yourself all in, I think anything is possible. How long it can take, that's another story, but I don't know. I think dreams are important. They fuel passion. They sort of feed purpose. I think dreams are super important. So I don't know. I think I went the opposite way.
Well, it's funny. I am, I'm an idealist by nature, still am. And I guess I have this feeling that, dreams are possible and can be practical if you think a little creatively, a little out of the box. I guess, again, I'm an idealist. I kind of think it's possible to have both. It doesn't have to be either or, if that makes sense.
And I think that mindset it's special because it doesn't limit you. I feel to a certain degree that, we raise our children and sort of put them in a box and sort of limit their quote unquote dreams. And I don't know, I part of me feels like that's a disservice. It feels like, just let them sort of go off on their path. And like you said, it has to be practical as well. But I don't know, I feel as I get older, I understand the importance of dreaming big.
So here you grew up in this environment where there was both arts, but be practical, but yet I can just sense that you've always had this desire to dream, the dreams can happen. That just doesn't happen overnight. But then tell us about, life as you grew up and got a job, and obviously that leads up to the Crucible, but tell us about that sort of pre-Crucible Yvette, kind of how were you living? What were you doing? Talk about that kind of life, if you will.
Well, the thing about dreams is they're they're sort of expensive. I had to get a job and I had to support myself. So I, of course, went into corporate America, and I've worked in the financial industry for many years, just planning meetings and events. And, I think dreams tend to take a back seat. You sort of push them off as you evolve into being an adult. You have financial responsibilities, you have to raise children. So I think they were sort of dormant for a long time. And, I went to work 9 to 5, 9 to 6, and the dreams were sort of dormant for a long time. So, the rat race was something I had to do to come, I don't know, to come to the place I am today, because I think the way I started thinking about it was that job paid for my dream. So that's why I say dreams are expensive. It would have been impossible to, not not work.
And at the same time,
please go ahead.
You said when we spoke before we hit record, you said that you always felt a void in that job. You felt like you weren't really making a difference. And we also ask, as we ask all guests to kind of, fill out a questionnaire and say some things so we can ask informed questions. And one of the things you said about quotes, you said that you're a collector of quotes. You actually have a wall of inspiration full of them. And one that stands out speaks to what you're talking about, I think. It's a Maya Angelou quote, and it is, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." As you were living that life, paying the bills to build the dream, did it kind of feel like there was an untold story inside you and that caused a little agony?
Oof, that's a really good question. Nope, cannot take credit and say that I felt there was anything special about my story or anything exceptional. I definitely did not walk around, thinking I could write the story and it would make a difference or change a life. No, I didn't think that. But I also think that comes from, a large chunk of my life. I felt I wasn't enough. I felt I wasn't worthy of good things. So I think that has also been a factor in, not thinking bigger earlier in life. So no, I definitely did not think I had a story that needed to be heard.
And that, in a sense, is so sad because there's many people, many women, I imagine, which I know that's your focus, that probably feel that. You probably represent thousands, if not millions of other people, other women who just go to work and they feel like I'm nothing special. They might even think I'm less than special. I'm like nowhere near that. And so just so that listeners just get a picture, you go to work on the subway or bus. I mean, not to get too much of a tangent, but years ago, back in the 80s, I actually also worked in Manhattan in the finance industry and got the subway. This was like pre-air conditioning. So I put on my suit in the morning and I get to Wall Street and I was like, why not even bother putting on a clean shirt? I think they have air conditioning, at least in some of the subways, but not back then. It was just, awful. So, I mean, I was some low-level entry position in the, Chase Manhattan Bank as several bank mergers ago. But so just talk about what life was like for you. You go to work every day and, subway or bus, and what was life like? How did you feel?
The only way I can describe it is being the mouse on the wheel. And I think so many people feel that way. It's sort of, have you ever seen Groundhog Day?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You're living the same day over and over again. And I just, I really didn't feel that there was, like you said, anything, special about my journey. So I went to work, I paid my bills, enjoy the nightlife now and then, but I always say I'm the average Joe. I really am.
So it sounds like, you accepted it. It doesn't sound like you were depressed per se. It was like, this is life and I'm just carrying on, right? I mean, that's fair.
Exactly.
But so it sounds like things are going, and maybe that could have been your life for the next 30, 40, 50 years. Who knows, But then there was a big change. We call it a crucible. Sometimes it feels like hitting a brick wall at 80 miles an hour, what have you. But
or more.
So tell us about that wall that you hit that really was very painful, but changed your life.
Well, I was with my ex-husband for almost 10 years. I was, chugging along. I was happy or content, I guess is the word. So I think towards the last, I'd say last year or two of our marriage, and it was post, I had a child. I sort of started feeling, I was questioning myself, who am I? I know I'm a mother. I have a career, quote unquote. I'm a wife. Who is Yvette? I know that sounds crazy, but I just started asking myself, is there more? Is there more to life, or is this it? And it just sort of began an unraveling of sorts. And the more questions I asked about myself, I think the more difficult it got for me. And towards the end of the marriage, this journey of finding myself put a lot of space between my husband and I. I was evolving, and we were sort of just going in separate ways. And we started living a separate life. And the divorce was imminent. And I started therapy, to figure out why was I feeling this way. It was sort of a nagging that I couldn't let go of. And as I found out more about myself and sort of started peeling the layers of the onion, I don't want to say it destroyed my marriage, but it deteriorated it. And we got separated, and the divorce triggered a serious depression. And that, between the divorce and the depression, my life was turned upside down. And I felt like I was walking around, sort of just lost. I felt lost.
I mean, as you're describing this is so, I can't adequately describe it. Sad does not seem to be the right word. I mean, just heart-wrenching, because here you are, you're evolving, you're trying to find yourself. It's like, who is Yvette? I mean, I think of this quote by Thoreau. It's like, people live lives of quiet desperation. They're not yelling and screaming. It's just this low-grade, I mean, before things got really bad, low-grade depression, low-grade, is this all there is? And, oh, well, time to do the laundry, time to go to work, time to cook dinner, time to whatever it is. Maybe I'll go to a movie with some friends, and then back to the treadmill. And you just keep going and going. And, it's just, but there was something amidst the rock or the crust of this is life, just almost like lava wanting to break through. It's like, life is more than this. There was almost like this deep inner part of Yvette that's trying to break through. And that was causing some pain. Whenever we evolved, especially from a sense of, hey, it's a bad analogy, but hey, I'm living my life as a caterpillar, but maybe I could be a butterfly. Well, that's probably, I don't know what it's like.
I love that.
I don't know what it's like to go from being a butterfly from a caterpillar to a butterfly. Maybe it's painful. I don't know. I mean, we obviously can't ask them, but maybe it is. I don't know. But for humans, it's typically painful, those changes. I mean, rarely
are growing pains, right?
Yeah, well, right. I mean, obviously you're a mother. I'm blessed to have 3 adult kids. Children are a blessing, but the process of, that happening is painful, but there's a blessing in there. And obviously any mother would say it was agony, but I don't really had a second off because I wouldn't have my beautiful children, right?
Right.
So it's so sad that you'd like to think your partner, husband, wife would be supportive. And again, we don't need to get into details, but it's sad when that doesn't happen. And by you being more Yvette, that somehow triggers the breakup of a marriage. I mean, that's just devastatingly sad. Again, I'm not asking for more details, but do you know what I mean? Just
No, I do.
that's so sad,
It is, but I find a lot of couples sort of, go evolve in their marriage or relationship over time. And, it's really hard to sort of meet this new person, quote unquote,
Right.
and feel like, wow, this is not the person I married. I'm not sure you're right for me. So as you evolve, you hopefully evolve together. But, I think in most cases, I'm not sure that is true. So I do understand it. And, I appreciate him because he was the same person, when I met him and the day that actually still until today, he's the same person. So he met, I think the core of me was the same, but there was a lot of change in that evolution.
So one can look back at it analytically and say, I get it. He met me when I was different. It makes sense. But while you're going through it, it's very logical. It's just excruciatingly painful. So you were going through this, you had, was it one child?
Yes.
At the time?
One child.
And going through depression. So you were going through all of this and you had these ideas. How did you navigate your way through that? Because, we often say in Beyond the Crucible, when you go through a crucible, which, an incredibly painful moment, you have a choice. Either you can hide under the covers and say, this is awful, it's not fair. Why should my marriage break up just because I'm just being more me? That's not fair. I don't care if it's understandable. It's just flat out not fair. I've got a young child. This is, I don't like my job anymore. I'm guessing, I'm getting depressed. I mean, some people could just get really angry at their spouse, at the universe, saying, this is just not fair. I didn't sign up for this. But yet you chose a different path. So help the listeners understand, because not everybody chooses your path. How did you get out of that, what must have been an incredibly painful situation?
Well, there are two reasons. Thank you, my therapist, wherever she is. I do believe in therapy. And my daughter, she was the light for me. And I knew that I had to move forward and heal. Now, healing it's a long process. But I don't want to say that it's impossible to do it alone, but you don't have to. So I did have help, and I'm grateful every day for that.
And, I want listeners to really understand, because sometimes, less now, but there can be a stigma about getting help. I mean, as listeners know, obviously, when, growing up in a 150-year-old family media business and $2.25 billion takeover and all, and then when that went under, I felt like I let my family down, parents, as a person of faith. I felt like I let God down in some strange way. Yeah, I don't know that I was clinically depressed, but I was in pretty bad shape. And so, yeah, I mean, counseling was definitely very helpful to me, because I was feeling definitely very worthless, actually. Everything I do, I screw up, and, my name was on front pages of newspapers, not in a good way. So, yeah, I think not everybody's situation is as public, but when you go through difficult circumstances, getting counseling is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It's a sign of courage. It's a sign of, I believe in myself enough. I'm worth enough to pay for some counseling, So I want listeners to hear that. But you talk about your daughter, in an article I read, there's a wonderful thing that your daughter said that she must be pretty special. And as you were trying to navigate your journey, and I guess you're probably saying, gosh, this is tough. She said, Mom, greatness takes time. I mean, that just blew me away. To have a daughter like that, that's just, talk about a gift. I mean, that's unbelievable. So Talk about your daughter and how is obviously
You're
counseling
gonna make me
helped.
cry. Oh gosh.
But talk about how your daughter, clearly she's a big part of the story, right? Of
Yeah.
what led you to where you are now.
I'll tell you a little story, and I don't share it often because it gets me really emotional. But I was in bed one day, and she spent weekends with her father. That particular weekend, she was with me. He had an event, and the lights were off. It was dark. The curtains were shut. It was maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon. She walks into my room. She must have been, I'm thinking 6 or 7, and she says, "Mommy, please wake up. Open the curtains." And that saved me because I called the therapist the next day, and I knew something had to change.
Do you feel like sometimes when there's somebody that you love or somebody that loves you that much, love can prompt us to do things we might not have had the strength to do ourselves? That sounds
And
like in part your daughter's love. It's like, you know what? Not only am I worth it, but my daughter is worth it. She deserves to have the best mom possible. I don't mean to be cliche about it, but does that kind of make sense? Was that part of your thinking?
absolutely. And the one thing that I do want to mention is not everyone has a child or has a loved one that can do that, that do the same, have the same effect.
Mhm.
But I do think that even self-love will just sort of catapult you to get help or just or change whatever is not working. So I just think it's important to mention that not everyone has what I had, but even if it's self-love, which to me is the greatest love you can ever have, find that, you know, that love within. If you don't have a daughter, a son, or a husband, I think that's important to mention. And it's one of the reasons why I started the platform, because a lot of people do not have the resources to pay for therapy, do not have a support group, do not have someone to draw them out of whatever darkness they are experiencing.
And one of
It's,
the
it,
things that helps you, Yvette, as we've talked before, and I guess before I get into that, let me say I love Maya Angelou. She's a phenomenal writer. I'm taking nothing away from her when I say my guess is your wall of inspiration. The top quote is, "Mom, greatness takes time." As great as Maya Angelou is, your daughter's quote, I think, is probably above that, maybe by one tick.
I think so.
But one of the things that you said helped you really as you were moving forward, you talked about how you kept diaries as a young girl. And so you were accustomed, you indicated earlier you were kind of creative, you were accustomed to writing. And there was something about writing as you went through your experience of that divorce and the pain and the depression that followed. Talk a little bit about that, about the role that played in your eventual ascension from that not wanting to get out of bed moment.
I think writing is powerful. And not it doesn't have to be writing for anyone, for an audience. Just writing, journaling, as a lot of us call it. It's journals are the only place where you can, I call it vomiting on a page, but where you can sort of let everything out. There's no judgment, there's no, sort of talk back. It's just you and that pen, you and that paper, or you and your computer, just sort of talking about all those things that you can't say out loud, because I think we all have things that we can't say out loud. We can't share with anyone else. And a journal is sort of your sacred um it's just you and that piece of paper, your thoughts, your dreams, your wishes, you know, your pain, everything that you're feeling. It's it's cathartic,
you know,
and I think it helps.
yeah,
It helps in the healing process.
yeah this is why I thought I'd be saying wow every 2 seconds on this podcast. So forgive me. But, I so agree and believe. I mean, I think all three of us here are writers, and I've gone through periods of my life and my newspaper days where I was journaling all the time, and it was, it was extremely painful. But yeah, for me, I mean, I'm a person of faith, and so when I journal, I feel like not only do I write down my frustrations, I feel like I hear like this inner voice. Now, for some, it may be their true selves. For me, and this sounds a little weird, it may feel like God or some higher power, but whatever it is,
not weird.
I feel like, because sometimes I'll be writing things down saying, I think this is true, but this doesn't make sense, or I don't know that this is me or not my conscious me. It's like the true inner me. It sounds a bit like metaphysical, but I've found sometimes when I've journaled, I've found some deep inner truth and almost tranquility of the soul that I wouldn't have any other ways. I don't know if any of that makes sense at all.
It all makes sense. It's funny because when I'm asked about the book, I am not lying to you when I tell you the book wrote me. It was something bigger than me. And I know it sounds a little, cuckoo, but it literally was sort of someone else taking the reins, and I'm the messenger. So no, everything you're saying I connected with it because that's exactly how I feel.
So you're in this place where you're coming out of an incredibly painful circumstance, and journaling sounds like a key medium. Connect sort of journaling to how your mission evolved. It's like rather than just, working in the finance world and meetings and events, you evolved, your life evolved. So how did the journaling connect that to where you are now? Because it sounds like there was an evolution of understanding who you were, and then what does that mean for you day to day? What's your mission and purpose in the world?
And put into the context of our series, right? Second act significance. First act, there's the job that you feel disconnected from, not really satisfied by. I think you said at one point it was just a job. Then you go through this painful crucible. Now maybe as you're journaling and you're kind of getting your mojo back, maybe that's intermission, and you're about to launch the second act. So to Warwick's point, how did that intermission, that journaling, that taking time to breathe, how did that launch you into your second act?
I'm not sure I'm answering correctly, but the journaling sort of helped me connect with, I guess, the writer. And I had something to say. I had a message, and I felt the journaling was just such a big part of whatever I was supposed to be doing. I feel I had something to say. I felt a lot of people are out there going through the same thing and they have no one. And I felt that I needed to put this message out there in hopes of helping others.
So when you say the message, how would you describe that message as it was forming? What's the message that you felt like people, and especially other women, needed to hear?
I say the core of the message is you can fall 100 times, but you can rise up. I know it sounds simple, but I wanted to inspire that fight in other women. And I feel that my writing is doing that. And when I get messages from women in Africa and other parts of the world, saying, you planted a seed, thank you for sharing your story. The same thing happened to me, and I feel like I can get past it. I know I'm doing something right.
And I've got to interject just as the co-host here to say, this is one of the reasons why when we were going through some of the things we read about you, some of the things you and I talked about, why I was amazed myself. I said wow a few times because I'm like, Yvette and Warwick are sort of the same person in some ways. And if you happen to be like watching on YouTube, you can look at them. They don't look like they're the same person. But some of the words, honestly, seriously, some of the ways that you describe your journey back, that you can fall, 1,000 times as long as you get back up, is the same thing that Warwick has talked about. Warwick just put a book out in the fall of his experiences. And his goal for that wasn't to just get it off his chest. His goal for that was to help other people. So you guys, I just want to make sure listeners catch that. This is further proof of what we talk about on the show all the time. The circumstances of your crucible may be different from the guy down the street or the gal down the street, but the emotions are so much the same. Listen to how Warwick has described his crucible of losing the family media dynasty at a cost of, he loves when I say this, $2.25 billion. And how that affected him and how he wanted to turn that pain into helping others. And then listen to how Yvette's talking about the pain of her divorce and the way that she then wanted to turn what she learned from that and provide that to other women to help them walk through it. It's the exact same blueprint written perhaps with different pens.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, Gary. I mean, that's one of the amazing things I've learned through this podcast is we've had people, as I've mentioned, of all, genders, races, backgrounds, heritages. But it's so often amazing how we're more the same as humans than we think. The struggle for significance, the struggle for identity. Who am I? And so here am I, a guy that grows up in Australia in about as wealthy a family as you can have, money, status, privilege, respect. We had it all, I mean, people want just money. They also want to be respected. Well, we had all of that, but yet when the company went under, and partly through my fault, the sense of worthlessness and who am I, everything I do, I destroy, and how do I find my way? Yeah, I mean, we couldn't be more different in our backgrounds, but yet, similar in one sense. I'm still, fortunately, from my perspective, the grace of God, very comfortable. But money is irrelevant to me. Empire is irrelevant. It's all about helping other people. I mean, that's all I really care about. It just is. And obviously, you're the same way. So I certainly found this in my own way, but it sounds like as you were wanting to tell the stories of other women, which we'll get to, Awakened Woman in your book, it sounds like there was a bit of healing in that as you were using your light to provide light to other women, to give them hope. I mean, just one drop of grace, one drop of hope here and there goes a long way. Did you feel like it was almost like a virtuous circle, like a positive flywheel? You were becoming more fully Yvette as you were helping other women?
Absolutely. I started feeling like I had purpose. I had something to share and that could help other women. And that, to me, that's gold. One of the things that I'm learning is something you mentioned. I think and I'll speak for women because I'm a woman, but I think there is so much more in common than we think. And our pain can come from different sources, but a lot of the experiences that we have, we can learn from each other. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping my platform will show. A lot of us go through quite a bit of the same things. So I think that's something that it's just so powerful when we share our stories and other people connect, and whether it's giving them hope or whether it's sort of helping them see a different perspective. I don't know. It's really powerful for me because that's a connection. That's life. That is, I don't know. It's so amazing and it's so beautiful when I can give that gift, because I do think it's a gift.
And, just that notion of, as you talk to other women, you matter. You do have a gift that the world needs. Don't hide it. It's depriving the world of your, inner light, your inner beauty, so to speak. It's a powerful message. And you're right. You were lucky. Lucky is probably not the right word, but somehow the universe, God, whoever it is, ordained that you would have an incredible daughter. That was part of your journey. Not everybody has that. Not every woman has children and, the way you did. But talk about how, just creating a supportive community. There may be women out there that they don't have a spouse, friend, parents who are encouraging. There are all too many people in this world who can tell us, the abuse does happen, sadly. Almost feel like it's like an epidemic. There is plenty of people that will tell certainly women, you're worthless. You're nothing. You will never amount to anything. Why should you even be here? You're a mistake. I could go on, but there are women that are told that. And so you're giving them hope. So talk about when you give women, you might give women hope that you speak to that have never felt hope at one moment in their whole lives. And they feel just discouraged. And so talk about that mission, because clearly there are women out there like that they have no friends, they have nobody that gives them any hope. So talk about how you work with them and how you give them hope, how you kind of help them continue one more day.
Well, I think the work starts from within. I find that a lot of women, that I've come across have it's this feeling of I'm not enough. And I think a lot of us struggle with that. And one of the most important things to do is the work inside. There's just no way to evolve, to change anything if you don't start with yourself. And that's something that no one can do for us. So self-work I will preach it every day. And it's never ending because I am still doing the self-work. It continues. So I would say, the support is important, but I think what you do for yourself is just so much bigger. It's so much more important because you can have the most powerful, the most inspiring people around you, and you do feed off that energy, but you have to do the work within. There's just no other way.
It's so true. Basically, you have to do the work on yourself and deal with your own, demons or challenges before you can help anybody else. You have to make that decision that I'm worth it and, my children are worth it. And if I'm not my best self, the sad thing of life is, I would say pretty much all mothers love their children, just have this devoted maternal love. But pain has a habit of leaking. And so your pain, you will inevitably inflict it on your children. You won't want to, but you won't be able to help yourself. That's just a fact of human psychology. So if nothing else, especially for those women who are mothers, well,
that's why we have generational trauma. We
right.
don't deal with our pain. We don't deal with our trauma, and we continue to pass it on. And I decided the buck stops here, so to speak. I have to deal with, my demons because I don't want to pass that on. And I think we all have some sort of trauma in one way or the other.
Absolutely. I often think of this a bit like kind of exercise or diet for that matter. You can't just go running a workout one day a month or one day a year and say, I'm good. No. It's it's a constant thing, and that goes for health, diet, fitness, and all, but also goes for the internal. You can't just stuff it. You've got to deal with it. I'm a very reflective person, so I've had to deal with some stuff in my own upbringing and pain and just various things that even beyond the whole crucible I found excruciatingly difficult to deal with within myself, and pain that was inflicted on me in some ways. You've got to deal with that. Otherwise, it will just leak out into those you love. And so, you've got to be courageous enough to say, I matter. I don't care if anybody else thinks that, I matter. You got to make a decision. And you're right, Yvette, only you can make that decision for you, right? You probably have some women that you're really trying to encourage, but they may not always hear the message, right? They may not always, and you can't help them unless they're willing to help themselves.
My mom has a saying, and it's just always sort of ingrained over time because she repeats it so much. But she says, "What is it? Help yourself, and God will help you." So unless you aren't willing to help yourself, there's just no one that can do that for you. It has to start with you.
Absolutely. All of your family says things that can go on your wall of inspiration, I've determined. You've got some really good perspective from the folks in your family. So let's talk a bit about the book, because we haven't really gotten there yet. You said the book wrote you. Talk about the book, what it's called, what the aim of it is, and you describe it as prescriptive fiction. I don't think I've ever heard that phrase. It's a fancy word
for self-help. My editor did that.
Oh, I've never heard it, and I've written a couple books, and I've never heard prescriptive fiction. So explain to listeners a little bit about what your book is about, what it accomplishes, what your goal in writing it was.
So first of all, it's a journey to becoming the best self, and it's part self-help, part memoir. I talk about the time before divorce and then post-divorce. So I call it, it's sort of two parts. And my second act is my awakening. And I talk about very tough details in the book. When I went through the depression, it was a dark time, and I wanted to make sure that readers understood the darkness that I was going through. I give some tips about, coming out of depression, how I did it, talk about dating a little bit after divorce, talk about some of the financial aspects that we never think about when we get married. It's a contract. It's a contract. And I think we tend to romanticize it and forget that there is a financial aspect. So I do get into that a little bit. And my goal in writing the book was bringing the reader into my experience as much as possible. And that took a lot of detail. It was very painful to write, but it was the only way to write it so people could understand what the pain was and what it meant to come out of that pain. And, towards the end, I talk about the birth of the Awakened Women platform.
Wow. So when you think about the book, what would you say are two of the three most important things that readers really need to take away, would you say?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I like how you say that when we ask questions. That's like the third time you've said that. So I'm feeling. So we need to put this in a show role, Warwick, about how good we are as questioners.
Well, they're very well thought out questions, and I can honestly say a lot of them I've never gotten before. So,
well, thank you.
I would say the first thing I want readers to take from it is there is light after dark. There, you can start over, and it doesn't have to be something that's like just, let me see if I could explain it. When a lot of us, I know for me as a woman, when we go through a divorce, we see it as something that's, you know, awful and painful. And I don't know. So you sort of feel like your life has ended. And I want women to understand that divorce is not the end of you. It's a beginning.
Mm.
It's another chance to start over and figure out who you are. And um, I think it should be, I'm not saying it's a positive thing, but if you look at it that way, it can be. I think it can be. And the third thing I would say, it's never too late to start something new.
Mm.
Never too late, never too old.
So, as you're talking about that, what you went through was very painful, but between the divorce and just you, that sort of emerging thought of who is Yvette, do you see any blessing or gift in that pain? That sounds like almost a barbaric
No,
question, but
no,
yeah.
no. There is absolutely, there are blessings. Um, my ex-husband and I have been able to successfully co-parent, and we're
Mm,
actually good friends. So I think that's a
Hmm.
huge blessing.
absolutely.
Yeah. I have a whole new career, and I promise you I would not have had it were not for that divorce and that pain. So absolutely. Um, and I would have to say falling in love again. That's a blessing. So there's plenty of blessings.
Wow. And, there's that phrase, blessed to be a blessing. Or it just feels like that's how you live. You've been blessed with, your daughter and so many other ways, but now you're blessing so many other folks. So talk about awakened woman. I love that phrase, to awaken, because that to me implies new birth, new life, awaken the beauty within, the butterfly that exists in every caterpillar, just waiting to just this beautiful creature, beautiful human, beautiful woman, if you will, in every sense of that word, waiting to come out. So, you interview, I think you've done more than 500 articles, everybody from celebrities to just mothers, abused relationships, people from Latino backgrounds. So talk about what's the mission of Awakened Woman, if you will.
That's easy. To inspire, empower, and encourage women to live their best life, to become their best selves. So when I started the platform, it was stories about me, stories about that I had just come across, experience that I've had with just watching other women. But around, I guess, the beginning of the pandemic, it's hard to write when you're not living life.
Hmm.
So those articles sort of became harder to write, and I thought about how I always talk about how as women we share many experiences. So I started reaching out to celebrities because I think, American society, I think we sort of put celebrities and people of affluent lifestyles, we sort of put them on a pedestal, and they're
Mhm.
human just like we are. So I wanted to start sort of interviewing some women that, we've seen on TV, CEOs, authors that we think of as, wow, have the perfect life. And the special thing about each interview is that every woman has shared something personal about her
Mm,
journey. It has nothing to do, with the promotion of of their careers. It's about them as a woman. And I think that makes it very special because when you read the interviews, you feel like, wow, that's something that I felt. That's something that I've experienced, and you sort of see the human side, and that's what I want. I think it's an awesome way to connect, just people by showing that humanity, because, we see them on TV and they may have millions in their bank accounts, but they're still human. They're just like you and I, except that, we're not on TV or we're not millionaires. But yeah, I think it's really special. I spoke to one woman. She's an actress, and I can't tell the name because I haven't released it yet. But we talked about the feeling of not being enough, and it was a very personal conversation. And she talked about, how she gets these great roles, she gets this great life, but she still feels like she's not enough. And that's what I want the readers to see.
I mean, that is so profound what you're saying, Yvette, that all humans, I think, really struggle with this sense of, am I enough? And I would imagine all women, and some maybe mask it more than others, but even so-called successful people, I mean, their lives aren't always easy. You look at Hollywood, how many happy marriages are there in Hollywood? It almost feels like that's the exception. Maybe that just mirrors the rest of American culture or the rest of world culture. I don't know, but sometimes it almost seems to be worse, whether it's divorce, substance abuse. I mean, it's just like things happen like that. I mean, if you feel enough, I mean, it's not that you won't get divorced, maybe less some of the other things, but I guess the point is there's pain everywhere, even amongst the successful, and we don't realize that. And then it makes these women seem human. Other women, it's like, gosh, I guess their life isn't perfect. It seems so good, but it's like, maybe, gosh, wow, that's painful.
We talk about self-love. I just interviewed an actress. She's on a current show on ABC. We talked about her self-love journey and how when she was younger, she had, was in an abusive relationship, and, her divorce and the effect that divorce had on her life and on this journey of self-love. And you sort of feel like, wow, we aren't that different. And it's one of my favorite interviews.
Wow.
Let's put a pin in that idea of the journey to self-love, because I have a question for you on that. But we've reached the part of the show where I normally say something like, the captain's turned on the fasten seatbelt signs, we have to land the plane soon. But since we're all journalists here, we're all writers here, I'm going to say that it's almost time. And Yvette, you may be too young to even know this, but there used to be in journalism, there may still be, I don't know, I've been out of it a while, but in my 20 years there, when you ended a story, you did -30-. That was how you ended the story. At the bottom of the story, -30- was the end. So we're getting to the point that we're going to have to put the -30- on this, but we're not there yet. I'd be remiss before I went and asked my last question, Yvette, if I didn't give you the chance to tell listeners how they can find Awakened Woman online and learn more about you. How can they do that?
Absolutely. They can visit awakened-woman.com.
Well, that's very simple. awakened-woman.com. One thing I want to say to you, Yvette, as we do begin to wrap before Warwick asks another question or two, is I was in journalism, as I said, for 20 years, 10 years of that as an editor. And one of the things I'm able to do, I can just tell when someone's a good interviewer, a good journalist, and I can tell you are. And here's how I can tell that. It's even before you said every woman shared something personal, that tells me that you're good at getting that information out. People feel comfortable talking to you. But the other thing I can see is, and if listeners go back and listen to this again, listen to the pauses that Yvette takes before she answers questions sometimes. One of the greatest tools in being a good interviewer is learning how to leverage silence. In other words, not being afraid of it. Don't feel you have to fill it up. And I can tell as you answer questions, you don't feel like you have to sort of froth at the mouth as you just keep filling the air with words. You think about them. As a questioner, I can tell that about you. As an old editor, I can tell that that's the way that you ask questions as well. And that makes you, I can tell, based on what you get people to say, a good journalist. So as someone who loves journalism, I applaud you for being a good one. I have hope for the future of the career I love because of people like you.
Thank you.
Now let me ask.
You're going to make me cry. Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
I didn't
that
mean
means a lot.
Well, You're welcome, and you're very deserving. Here's the last question I want to ask you, because we ask you on the little form that we have. If there was only one question we could ask, what would you want it to be? And you were talking before I started blathering here a little bit about the journey to self-love. And you wrote, if we can only ask you one question, to ask you this one. What has been your biggest challenge on the journey to self-love?
Understanding my worth.
Mm.
I'm going to cry again.
No,
I think...
Yeah, no, please go. If you have more to say, please do.
I think understanding your worth can change your entire life. Knowing your worth, it affects every decision you make in life, whether it's in your personal life, your career. The choices that you make are all affected by knowing that you're worth everything.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that is so profoundly true. I mean, I believe, I guess from my perspective, every human being is worthy of love. Every human being is worth something. Again, my faith perspective, and I think probably a lot of other religious perspectives, teach that God loves us not because of what we do, just because of who we are. There's nothing we can do or need to do to earn God's love, at least from my philosophical and spiritual paradigm. So, but however you get there, just that sense that every human being, every woman, obviously that's your focus, every human, every woman has inherent worth. You know, she starts out beautiful and will always be beautiful in her soul and spirit, whether she's 2 or 92. It does not matter. Every human, every woman has worth. You know, as we kind of sum up here, there's a comment somebody said about you that, again, we're only just getting to know each other, but I think is obviously true. It says that she, referring to you, writes with endless empathy. I don't know, if I was writing it, I'd probably say unending empathy. I'd probably phrase it that way, but, you know, same thing. But that's a real gift because it makes people feel comfortable sharing. And by sharing, you can help so many people. So as we kind of wrap up, there may be some women who are listening to this podcast and heaven forbid, maybe today is their worst day. Maybe they're in the midst of a very ugly divorce, lost a job, maybe they're abused. I mean, there's all sorts of tragedies that can happen to people and to women. What would be a message of hope that you would give maybe that woman that's listening to you today, and today may be her worst day?
Let's say, hold on, tomorrow is a new day and everything can change. But it's going to take you to change whatever it is that's bringing that pain. Every day you wake up, you get a chance to start over. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Well, I've been in the communications business long enough, listener, to know when the last word on a subject's been spoken, and Yvette has spoken the last word on this subject. And what she just laid out and what she just said is a recipe, is a blueprint, is a guideline for how you start a second act. And what she's talked about in the previous 45, 50 minutes of the show is how you develop significance in that second act. She has done that very thing. And until the next time we're together, listener, do remember what we've just talked about here, that your crucible experiences, we know, are painful. We know that they can knock the wind out of your sails and change the trajectory of your life. Go back, listen to Yvette tell her story. It changed the trajectory of her life, but she didn't stay knocked off balance. She found her balance. She found her worth. She pressed into how she could live her life of significance by helping others. And that has led her to a place right now where she is living life on purpose in service to others. And that is what we call at Crucible Leadership and Beyond the Crucible, a life of significance.